Hello, dear ones. Thank you for joining me today. When I hear things, see things, uh, feel things, whatever, when things come to me, I sometimes get an idea about a YouTube video or a title for a YouTube video. And then I write it down for, whenever that calls me to do that. So I had one written down a little while ago, and it says, "What do you deem unspiritual about yourself? And then what do you do about it?" And I think that fits in, of course, so well with everything else that we are exploring here. So let's start with the question. I do like to make my YouTube videos here a little more experiential and explorative, so you're more engaged. Because if it's all mental, it stays mental and it doesn't come into the body and it doesn't become our own felt sense experience. So I want to ask you that question. What do you deem not spiritual or unspiritual about yourself? Just see if anything pops up. You may not have anything. You may have done enough work where you just like, no, that doesn't resonate with me. It's great. But if there is anything, just see, what do you deem unspiritual about yourself? And then the next question is, what do you do with that? Do you make yourself wrong for it? Do you try and get rid of it? Do you try and rise above it? Let's say it's anger or jealousy or greed or anything, any of those experiences that most people prefer to hide. And calling them unspiritual is not uncommon. I definitely used to have that myself, where there was anger and yeah, and jealousy, all the things that we all feel. Nobody's different here. And I felt embarrassed about it. I didn't want anybody to know that about me. So I would just, make myself a little more spiritual or a little more loving, all the while this underlying unspiritual energy was just brooding, waiting for something, either to be liberated or to get to express itself. And the more I suppressed it, and that's how it is with these feelings when they're not being digested through our system. When we learn how to do that, we suppress them, and then it's like the pressure is on, and that's why sometimes they come out when you least expect it or even least want it, and then you may feel even more embarrassed about yourself and beat yourself up, and then more pressure on it. And of course, it's never going to change that way. It can't. You're just giving it energy. You're just pushing on it with all your energy, and you're just feeding it. And that's why it eventually blows up into something. So if you have any areas that you feel are unspiritual, or maybe just that you're super embarrassed about, spiritual or not, um, how what do you do with that? And this is a real, honest self-exploration. You don't have to tell anybody about it. You can, if you want to, you can put it in the comments and say, I'm doing this thing, because I feel it's not spiritual, it's not okay. So I do this with it. So just look at that. Let's invite those parts up to the surface. Let's just say hello to them, say hello to this unspiritual behavior, or, really obsessive thoughts or sexual thoughts or jealous thoughts, where you just are really feeling that in your body. And then because we don't know how to deal with them, and because in this world they're deemed unspiritual, even if we're not on a spiritual path, the fact that there is a sense of shame around it and embarrassment, like, who told us that it's not okay to have these feelings, that we need to suppress them? Where does that idea even come from? And as I'm saying that word, that sentence, who told you, it reminds me of the Garden of Eden, when Adam put a fig leaf on his genitals, and then God says, who told you that you're naked? And that's kind of that thing. It's kind of a religious thing a lot of the time, or spiritual thing, that we're not supposed to have these feelings or these thoughts. But the bottom line is we do. So if you can become aware of what you deem, we can also say not okay, these are not okay. These need to be suppressed, push out, turned into a little frozen water drop, as I've talked about recently. And we leave them out there, we ignore them, we bypass them, we pretend they're not there, and then we create like a persona that's very opposite of this. We do it, we all do it, but we don't have to keep doing it. We do it because we don't know what to do instead. And we don't know that we don't need to be ashamed of them. So if you can see if there are any parts in you that you suppress, you don't admit into the light, notice how you do that. It's just pure self-exploration. How do you do it? What do you do with them? What do you tell yourself? And you can write it down if you want, just to do a little more exploring about it. And how does that work? Is it helping? Is it making you feel more free and liberated and permission to be yourself? I remember when I started my Hakomi training, I'm a Hakomi therapist. If you're familiar with that, it's all about embodiment. It's kind of an assisted self-study. So that means somebody would assist me in study myself, study my anger, my jealousy, whatever it was, in a very loving, safe way, where there is no judgment, where there is no shame or any of that, where you can just start feeling the okayness that these imperfect feelings and behaviors are here. So, of course, that was very helpful for me, because I felt like, oh, when I'm in this space with this therapist or with this guide, I can just be curious about these feelings instead of thinking that they're not supposed to be here. So, just that attitude, it's like it brings some warmth to the frozenness, right? Can you see that? Just this okayness that this little frozen drop is here that I have pushed out. Suddenly that part of me feels like, oh, he or she is okay with that? Ah, deep breath. And then what can happen next then is that then this water drop starts feeling safe, or frozen water drop, because it's frozen, right? It's contracted. It's like, oh, can't be here. But then this gentleness, whether it's your own or somebody else that you feel safe working with, then this the frozenness starts softening, starts dissolving, starts thawing up, defrosting. And then suddenly you find out what is actually inside the frozenness. What is the water when it's not frozen? And then you can start listening, because the frozenness, when it thaws, when it melts, there is a story. And it's kind of funny because it could be tears right away, right? The frozenness melts and then it becomes tears. Could be anything, but it's also a nice little metaphor to use for here. And so instead of suppressing it, right, the tears, or the anger, it's being listened to, it's being welcomed, so it can start feeling safe enough to open up, so that we don't have to carry this contraction anymore. The most important thing, of course, is that it feels really, really safe, that we will never ever be made wrong for it, or shamed for it, or blamed for it, whatever it is. That's where real deep healing can happen, where we'll be able to feel first the frozenness of the drop, and then as it's being made okay, then we can feel what the water is about, when if it's anger, let's say. So the anger starts melting, and there might be like some anger, and then when you start really allowing the anger to express, most likely there's a deep hurt underneath, because something has happened that was unfair. It wasn't right. There was some trauma involved, and many times these frozen parts, they are traumatized parts, and they don't need any more trauma, including from ourselves. And that's why I think it's such an important thing that we really learn self-love. And it is a skill. It doesn't just come naturally overnight. It's a skill we need to practice. So instead of having somebody there with you, which is great, but at a certain point you can actually be that outside for yourself. So you can welcome every single part of you back home. And then you'll also see that whole idea that they were not spiritual is just a lot of BS. It's just nonsense, total nonsense. I'm going to say it's one of the Matrix's tricks to keep us contracted, to keep us separate from the divine. And then once it starts dissolving, then you automatically experience yourself as more whole. It's like this excluded part is now being included back to the wholeness. So there's no more fractured parts there that feel separate from the divine. It's like, no, honey, come on in. You can be in here too. There's deep relaxation. And with that, there's more flow of your own energy, of your own divine energy. So that's my invitation for you today. If you are up for it, explore that within yourself. If you have somebody to explore it with and feel the need for it, please reach out. If you would like to explore it with me, please reach out to me. And the link for that will be in the comments below or in the description. And make this a priority in your life, so that you can start living aligned with yourself. There is really nothing more delicious. And these parts inside that we have been holding on to, when they start softening, it has an impact on your whole body and well-being. There's going to be more flow in the organs, in your heart, in anywhere. But it is a process, and it's always a process for me too. I'm not just sharing things that are not true in my own life. So see if that resonates with you, and then maybe that could be your gift to yourself before the end of the year, so you can start the new year as your own best friend.